Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another week's episode. This week, my guest is ever so patient, and her name is Emily Mercedes. I say that because we started talking about her coming on in March, and it's July. So, Emily, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ijama.
You're welcome. And so Emily's shop is Emily Mercedes Art. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like you said, I'm Emily Mercedes. I'm an artist. I'm a mom to a 2-year-old who's hilarious named Ryland. And I actually used to be the head editor of a website called The Berry, which is the sister site of the Chive.com. It's definitely a pretty popular website, so maybe a few listeners have heard of at least the Chive. But last year I ended up quitting my day job, which most people would think I'm insane because it is probably the coolest company to work for ever, and it definitely was. But to be a full-time mom, and now I paint while Ryland naps, so I'm living my dream right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now just to go a bit into your background, the Chive, and I want to say this because we were talking about this off air, and I thought it was pretty cool. So for anyone who doesn't know what the Chive and the Berry is, can you tell us what those are?
Sure, no problem. So the Chive was started by my older brothers, John and Leo, and it's the #1 male entertainment website in the world. And it sounds kind of weird to say it like that. It's basically a photo blog, and a community, and they have t-shirts and whatever else. They have so many different things going on. It's hard to keep track of. But they actually recruited my husband to start Chive Charities. So there's a whole philanthropic route to the website. And then the Berry is the female version. It used to be more photo oriented, but is more editorial now. It's kind of the way of the internet. Most women like to read articles, so it's definitely more editorial now, and they have their own t-shirts too, and it's quite the following. So I was able to kind of make some really cool connections before I decided to make the jump, and have been using that to my advantage, hopefully.
Okay, so you leave all this to launch out into the world of small business and entrepreneurship. Did you have any concerns walking away from the security of a full-time job and steady income and deciding to be an artist?
Oh, yeah. I mean, #1, will people want to buy my stuff? It's kind of crazy to think, that started off in my head, and I get excited to see what kind of things I can create as well. I like to challenge myself a lot. But I guess #1 would be, oh man, am I going to even have any sales? It turns out I've had a few since. I'm by no means in the thousands of sales like some of the people you've interviewed. But, I'm getting there. It's been pretty cool to become a businesswoman. I have a sole proprietorship now. What the heck? If you said that I would have that maybe 5 years ago, I'd be like, a what? In my own, business bank account. I mean, I feel like a big kid now, and it's pretty cool because it's my passion. So I'm actually loving being a businesswoman, whereas I thought, I could never do that. Can't I just paint and somebody else do everything else for me? And I'm loving it. Yeah.
Now, before you did that, before you left everything to sell on Etsy, did you test the waters first to see if it was even viable, if there was a market for your specific type of art, or did you just go on, full on and see what would happen?
I did test the waters, but not for very long because I'm kind of impatient. So like I said, I have some connections through the Chive. So I made a little army man with a bang banner coming out of his gun, and also a Fisher Price phone, like a chatter phone with a banana on top, for gifts for my brothers. And long story short, those were my first pieces that I brought in to scan in at a print shop and just have prints available. Because I figured that would be easy to ship. I don't have to worry about framing. Let's just see how it goes. And then when I told my family that I was starting this Etsy shop, of course, the typical, like, the second sale I ever had was my mother. Shout out to Barb. The first sale was actually an old coworker of mine. He's a jack of all trades. I couldn't even tell you exactly what he does. He's an artist himself. But as I was showing him my Etsy shop kind of in my testing phase, as I was getting all of my materials ready, shipping materials, this, that, and the other, he made a purchase and I was like, wait, what? You're not allowed to do that. I'm not quite ready. So anyways, I tested the waters. I got all of my shipping supplies ready, or what I thought I needed. And then my brother put one or three of my army men, because I created a few more, up in one of his most popular posts. And then overnight, once everyone knew I had an Etsy shop, and I'm not kidding you, there was only 8 things in it. I think I made something like $800. And I was like, whoa. I am not making that every day now. No way. Okay. No way. It was kind of one of those, like, all at once. People have been wanting maybe a print or two, and it happened so fast. And so I was like, man, there's something to this, but I just need more time. So yeah, I'm by no means making that much a day. Whoa, that would be amazing. But it was kind of a cool way to let me know that perfect strangers out there were willing to buy some of my artwork, and it gave me the confidence to just pull the ripcord.
Yeah. So now, were you familiar with Etsy before you started having the thought to come on there and sell your art, or did you discover it later on? And did you have any notion to maybe just sell your art directly from a website of your own?
So I actually had an Etsy shop in 2009.
You did?
It was called M Mercedes Originals or something. And Ijama, all I did was put up past works that I had done in college, and they were framed, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I have an Etsy shop. And then I was like, what the heck am I doing? I was working full time and still partying like I was in college. It was just like a terrible idea. And I removed it. But then I kind of realized that the prints is where it's at, and actually kind of the bread and butter is becoming the commission pieces. So yeah, I did have an Etsy shop for a hot second, but I closed it.
Okay. So now when you came back on Etsy and you opened Emily Mercedes Art, and I will have a link to Emily's Etsy shop, so you can go over and check out her artwork and what she's doing. You did a challenge, and it was a 1 painting a day challenge for 90 days. Was that at the very beginning of your new Etsy shop, or was it somewhere along the lines? And what was the whole purpose of you called it the hashtag 90 days of nostalgia, right?
Yeah. So when I was working at the Berry, I would do photo posts. I was in charge of doing all of the nostalgic posts. It was, first of all, one of my very favorite posts to do, but I realized there was something to nostalgia. If it pulls at your heartstrings and makes you laugh, I was like, there's something to this. Obviously, the Army men were selling the best, and I had come out with maybe a few more prints of some iconic chairs, like Eames and stuff like that. And I sold a few of those, but when you see some of the stuff in the nostalgia line, you're like, oh man, that is my childhood. Put this in my cart right now. So it was kind of a combination of that, and it was actually, I know you asked when. So springtime of last year in 2015 is when I opened the shop, and it wasn't until right before Thanksgiving. And what a terrible move on my end to be like, you know what, going into the holidays, I'm going to overload myself with a painting a day. And I know I'm a deadline person, and that if people are wanting to see this on social media, I better have it done. And some of the paintings I posted were like 10 minutes till midnight. I was like, it's in the same day. It counts, right? Oh my word. But anyways, I ended up doing that from basically Thanksgiving through the next 3 months. And you can see an evolution of, I just, practice made me better. It was
Yeah.
so good for me. At the beginning pieces, I was like, oh, this isn't that great. And then toward the end, I was feeling more confident. I was painting Queen Elizabeth's face. It was so much fun. So much fun.
So when you were doing these, were you actually putting each day's work up for sale on Etsy, or were you just posting them on Instagram or on the Berry?
So that is where the challenge, I realized it kind of lost some people because it was realistic. I actually did them in one day. It wasn't realistic for me to have prints available because my process is I take all of my paintings. I would take maybe 7 at a time to my print shop. Shout out to Dynamic Reprographics. They're amazing in Austin, Texas. If you're an artist and live here and need prints, go to them. But they took care of scanning all of my stuff in, and we had to edit around each one of them to make it white blank space, to make sure the prints came out where there's no, little dots or things that were specks of paint that I might have missed or whatever. So I ended up having to post all of those prints maybe like a week later. So people, I mean, they were selling, obviously some were more popular than others, but I want to do another challenge where I just put the original live on Etsy by a certain time at night. And so if you see the work in progress and you want to get it that day, there's one shot to get it. I'm just curious to see how it would go.
When you say one shot to get it, you mean you'll leave the listing live for just one day?
Well, it would be the original, and I wouldn't make prints of it.
Oh,
And
I see. I
mean?
see.
It might be worth a shot. It may not go over well, but like I said, I like having a to-do list. So even if it gets a few custom orders or, I sell a few, it's still really fun for me.
Okay. So the next one you have coming up will be the hashtag 80 Days of Abstract.
Yes, because I did all of these toys and characters, and I feel like I kind of pigeonholed myself a little bit where, this is only what she does. They're watercolor with pen and ink details, very vibrant. But I also love the abstract world, and it's totally different. And I know most artists would say, well, pick something that you are good at and just make lines of that. But I get bored really easily. So I'm like, well, okay, enough of that. I'm going to try something new. And so, I think I'm going to do the abstract route, and who knows, maybe I'll do another 90 Days of Nostalgia sometime next year or something.
Now, when you do your challenges coming up, are you going to just make them personal challenges, or are they challenges that you might open up to others so you can all see and appreciate each other's art?
Oh, like challenge other artists? That would be cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I never thought about that. I like that. Oh, I like that a lot. I might have to do that. Get other people involved. That'd be really cool for sharing in general.
Yeah, I think so. Right. You gain some momentum and all whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a question for you. You're doing something that I know some Etsy sellers do, but I think you're the first one I'm going to talk to about this. In your art shop, you sell both physical prints and downloadable printables.
Yeah, that was new actually as of maybe a week ago. I'm trying something out. So
Okay.
I have, from my early days, I have an entire watercolor alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, just kind of searching around to see some competition, because I would sell some of those, but they weren't really flying off the shelf or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put so much time and effort into something, you're like, well, what would work? So I ended up putting them as downloadables for the whole alphabet.
Okay.
Basically, is kind of a science project. Like, if this works, I'll probably keep them up for a few weeks, and if it doesn't work that way, then I'll remove them.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah.
far, have you seen any traction on those?
No, still no.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
it was kind of cool because I had heard on your podcast and kind of looked around at the whole like downloadable world on Etsy, and it was kind of interesting to delve into to see when you open up a new listing to make it downloadable, what kind of is removed from the back end of things and what you
Yeah.
can add in. It's a whole other world in there that if I have more time, I think it'd be a really cool world to get into, especially if I find a good niche for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And then plus your shop policies, and this is the other thing that you should take note of. Your shop policies will need to be different for your downloadables.
Oh yeah, see, I'm still totally learning.
Okay. I think we're all learning, but yeah, good. Yeah. So watch out for that.
Oh, good to know.
So let's talk about, well, before we go to that, currently, so it's safe to assume that your goal for your Etsy shop is to make it a full-time business, which doesn't necessarily mean you're going to limit yourself to the Etsy platform, but that you're making being an artist your full-time business. Am I right in that assumption?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay. And to that end, what are your plans to expand your art empire?
Oh, I love it. So one other podcast other than yours that I am completely obsessed with is...
You mean there's another one that you listen to, not just mine?
Right. I know. It's tough. I know it's probably tough to hear, but no. It's called Art for Your Ear, and it's by The Jealous Curator, and she's like a hero of mine, and she's constantly curating artists' work on her website, and she has a podcast and several books out, but I feel like in order to be taken completely seriously in the art world, you need your own website.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very beginning, coming from my whole web background for 6 years, and sometimes I feel like before my husband came along, I feel like I slept with my computer. I was so over it. I was so sick of blogging. I was like, oh, I love all of you, but I don't think I can look at the computer anymore. So I think for a little while, I was actually just taking a break, and Etsy was easy for me because it wasn't, you make your listings and you do what you got to do in there. But so now that I'm kind of over that and becoming more passionate about making my own, I am my own brand now. It's Emily Mercedes. So I think it would behoove me to have my own website and do more original stuff. That is what I'm going to challenge myself to do over the next, hopefully I get to do this for a really long time. And, just get into that art world in a really real way with my own, work. So, and my own website, but.
Now, did you or do you have any fears or reservations about making Etsy your initial debut platform as opposed to your own personal website? Or are you comfortable with using Etsy as a, maybe, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like a market testing ground before you branch out into your own personal site?
Yes, I think it helped me realize what I would want on my own personal site. I think it might be cool to have a page that goes to my Etsy site, but I feel like people on Etsy are searching for certain things, and my site would maybe have more of my fine art stuff because I actually have an entire line of mixed media that I've already started working on that I want to get back to, that I've sold maybe one print out of it because it's not people aren't maybe searching for that I've found. So yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in a roundabout way, but I got my answer.
Okay, cool.
Now, let's talk about time management and how you manage your time. So this is what you're doing full time. What does your typical day look like? And what do you, what does your typical day look like?
So like I said, I'm a stay-at-home mom with my 2-year-old. So whenever we get around for the day, we end up going, this has been my saving grace, but the YMCA here in town, once the child hits maybe 18 or 19 months, they can stay in the childcare area for something like 2 hours. And once I realized that, I realized, oh my gosh, this is going to be so great. I can get a workout in, which I'm a huge fitness fanatic. So I can kind of get in there, obviously listen to podcasts while I'm working out and inspire myself. But that last hour where he's hanging out and playing with his little buddies, I get to do all of my computer related stuff, whether it's, responding to Etsy conversations or emailing different platforms that I'd maybe want to get featured on, or updating listings. All of that stuff I'm able to do at the gym, and it provides me that structured time. Like, well, don't just go on Facebook for 45 minutes, Emily. Just do this and get it done and keep your books and whatever else.
Yeah.
So then when I get home after we eat, Rylan usually sleeps for an hour to 2 hours. And because I'm able to finish all of that computer work at the gym, I actually have been able to just be creative almost every time he goes down for a nap. It's really a great kind of reward for, hanging out with a rambunctious 2-year-old for a while. You're like, okay, it's silent. I'm just going to paint for a little while.
While I draw.
Yeah, or take care of Etsy orders.
Yeah.
During the 90 Days of Nostalgia Challenge, it was drastically different, and I was painting a lot more at night because I kind of forced myself to do this ridiculous challenge. But I'm painting a lot less at night and hanging out more with my hubby. So I feel like it's crazy, but I'm more productive in this whole world with these kind of structured times where I'm going to have this much time. And I know a lot of people might be able to relate to that. Then if I had maybe a whole day, I would fritter it away doing other things if I had a whole day to myself probably, but that's kind of what my day looks like.
Okay. And I can relate so well to that because I say it all the time. When I have time, I waste it. But when I know that my time has to be allotted to certain things, where, I don't have a choice, I'm much more, I use it much better. So I'm much more productive. That's the word, much more productive.
For sure.
Now, so you have different types of art. We've talked about the Army Men. What's the inspiration in general behind your artwork?
Well, the nostalgic line, obviously, I thought it'd be fun to kind of flash back to childhood. And I want to focus maybe the next round on just toys.
Okay.
So that was kind of that whole realm of things. In fact, the mixed media line that I have, and I just have a few of them up, it's a really intricate and detailed line. First of all, the 90 Days of Nostalgia Challenge was all done on 5x7 watercolor paper. So the details, I mean, most people would probably think I'm crazy, but I get really detailed in my work. And I always have, even since college in my undergrad, my art teachers thought I was crazy probably. But so that mixed media line was inspired by all of the cities that I lived in. I've lived in a lot of different cities over my 20s.
Yeah. Now, why so many?
Well, so I went to Indiana University, grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay.
And then everyone kind of leaves Indiana. My mom would be so sad if she heard me say, she knows that everyone just kind of up and leaves. But I was like, I'm going to move to Chicago and be with all my friends and do that. So I ended up working in the same office as my brother, Leo, for an online advertising company as a sales planner. The beautiful people that hired me, I went to school for elementary education. They hired me because I was bubbly and I was willing to figure out how to do everything. I was like, I'll try it. I will learn. It was a huge risk, but oh man, lots of late nights and weekends. But I ended up working in the office next to my brother Leo, and he kind of saw that I was getting to understand the internet world. And so when he started the Chive, he about a year in was able to quit his day job to kind of focus on that full time with my brother.
Mm.
And he saw, well, I think Emily's kind of getting the internet lingo because it's a different language.
Yeah.
And so they took me out for some beers and said, we want you to start what it was at the time, it was called Chive, which is even hard to say now. Luckily, we rebranded to the Berry a few months later. So it actually gave me the, I don't know, I could live anywhere.
Right.
It was awesome. So I was like, okay, well, after 2 winters in Chicago, I was like, oh my gosh, winter actually sucks. Why am I here? So I ended up moving to Nashville, Tennessee, just to get warmer and to not have to deal with such a long winter, and ended up reconnecting with a high school friend of mine, cue my now husband, Brian. Sparks flew, emotions ran high. We got married. But in the interim, I moved to Atlanta, which is where he lived. And then actually right after our engagement party, my brothers and sister and whole family came down to Atlanta to help us celebrate our engagement, and they recruited him to start Chive Charities, which is that whole philanthropic part of the site.
Yeah.
So they said, Emily, you got to move to LA. That's how they got me out to LA, was recruiting my husband, because I was kind of avoiding it. I don't know, it's so expensive, and every time I open my mouth there, they're like, you're not from here. I'm like, why do you say that? So then Venice Beach happened. It was actually awesome. Loved every second of it. Obviously, coming from California, the weather's perfect. But then they decided for people to be able to start families within the Chive organization, it would make way more sense to be outside of California. So they were looking at Boulder, Colorado, and Austin. And Austin won out because of being such a huge tech city. So we were trying for a family at that time, and I was telling you, Ajama, before this, oh my gosh, where would we put a baby in Venice Beach? In my dresser drawer? Seriously, where are we going to put a baby? It's like our tiny apartment. So we volunteered to be the first to come to Austin, Texas. And that's kind of how we ended up here. Now it's been 3 years, I think, or something ridiculous. It's the longest I've been in the same place since my childhood, but I love it. Wow.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I saw the list of cities you lived in, and I was like, okay, I need to ask her about this because there has to be a reason. Yeah. And so Chive Charities, 10% of every purchase from your Etsy shop goes to the charities. Mm-hmm. What charities does Chive Charities support?
So they actually take care of several different realms of things, like servicemen and women. And then all the way to, and this is the coolest part, they help underdog people, like things that you've never heard about. Like one of the first little girls they helped has osteogenesis imperfecta, and at the time it's brittle bones, but nobody knew what that was. Wow. So they're kind of giving a megaphone to people that have these maybe chromosomal disorders or various other things that they need help with. So luckily the Chivers are such a unique group of people, and they're very philanthropic and willing to open up their wallet to help out a cause. So my brother John found that out when he was asking, hey, this fire station in Fluvanna County needs our help, and he didn't know. Like, it was just an entertainment website with really funny pictures and some hot chicks and random, he's like, what are these people going to think of if I say, well, these people need our help? And something like $30,000 later, after one night of asking the Chivers for help, he's like, whoa, we have something here. Wow. So yeah, it's a really great group of people, and yeah, so I'm still so very connected to the Chivers and the Chive community that I thought it'd be fun to have a charity component to my site.
Nice.
And give
now,
10%.
How does that work with your Etsy shop? I know on eBay they have charitable giving it's built into the system, so that every time you get a sale, automatically whatever percentage you designate to go to whatever charity you designate will automatically be sent to them. Etsy doesn't yet quite have charitable donations as integrated into the system. So the questions I have for you are, one, how do you do your accounting for that? And two, if others want to do that, what would you recommend, or how would you recommend they go about setting up giving, if not to Chive Charities, but other charitable organizations that they might just have a heart for?
So the way I do it is actually, I even keep my books pretty simply in just an Excel spreadsheet. So the breakdown that I do is from the profits that I get from Etsy each month minus what it costs for me to print things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take 10% of all of that and just make a one-time monthly donation to Chive Charities every month.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish it was like way cooler, but that's the best way that I found out how to do it.
That's more intelligent than the way I was thinking of doing it, like for each and every sale that comes through. But of course, it makes sense. Do it once at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month.
Creatives don't like keeping books, so the more we can streamline something, the better. So I just do it once a month.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's talk about your pricing strategy. How did you decide what you were going to charge or what value you were going to put on your artwork?
So my prints cost, I think, something like $7 a square foot. So it's pretty easy for me to back into what I would still need to make a profit, still giving 10% to Chive Charities, and covering my costs. But I also, look at other people selling prints, and I don't want to, sometimes you see artwork and you're like, why are you charging so little for that?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's a value to, paying an appropriate amount. So I've kind of messed with my pricing over the course of the last year just a little bit. And I kind of stuck with what I'm with now for a little while, and it seems to be working.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you think you found your sweet spot, at least for right now anyway?
Yeah. And I give coupon codes out a lot too.
Okay. Now, do you sell internationally as well, or do you limit your sales to just the continental US and Hawaii?
I do international sales as well.
Okay. And have you done that from day one?
Yeah. I just went for it. I was like, let's just do all the things and I'll figure it out later. And it's kind of been a funny process, but it seemed to have worked out okay. Everyone got what they needed.
Yeah.
And the one thing about in general shipping is if something didn't work and they didn't get their product, I reach right out and say, I'm sending you another one. If you happen to get the one in the mail, keep it or give it away as a random act of kindness. It's way better to just not put up any kind of odd, I wouldn't want to use the word fight, but just, easier the better. And obviously the reviews are better that way too. But.
Yes, absolutely. We had a discussion just this week in the Facebook group, and someone was asking that because a buyer hadn't received the package yet, and she was concerned about what to do, how long to wait before either issuing a refund or not, or I can't remember what the details were. And I think we all, the consensus was eat the cost, give another one, just make that person happy.
For sure.
Because it will come back to you somehow, for the better.
It will. I even have one from this week of someone reached out wanting one of the prints from 90 Days of Nostalgia that I had taken down recently. And I was like, oh, no problem. And without even thinking, because I'm always sending, coupon codes, I was like, and go ahead and use my shipping code. And she goes, well, I live in England. And I was like, oops, I didn't even think, you're like, oh, well, darn it. There goes that. So I said, you know what? It'll still be on me. Don't worry about it. Just please think of me when it comes to your gifting needs. And she said, I'll be back. She's
nice.
With a smiley face. If she doesn't come back, I hope this person enjoys their birthday. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And a smiley face always makes everything okay.
I think so too. I think emojis are just the best way of our future.
I know. Now I speak emojis so fluently, I'll soon forget English.
I know.
The other thing I was going to ask regarding shipping is, do you use the shipping calculator or do you use flat price shipping?
So I actually made shipping profiles for all of my stuff because they're all similar sizes. And once I figured out generally shipping a 5x7 print is, this X amount of money. And of course you want to factor in your shipping materials and stuff like
Supplies,
that.
yeah.
So I really I have 3 shipping methods and it's priced pretty appropriately. Finally, like I said, I had kind of a learning curve there. But I think I finally hit it. And of course, maybe they'll probably jack up prices again at USPS and I'll have to do it again, but it's no big deal.
Yeah, I know every beginning of the year, well, towards the end of the year, I start holding my breath, just waiting for USPS to tell us how much more we're going to be paying.
I know. It's definitely been a learning process. I actually made my largest custom order recently was a 40 by 40 inch watercolor, and I had never shipped something that large. Luckily, it was a friend of mine, and I was like, do you mind if I just get this all together and you can kind of be my guinea pig, and I got to figure out how much it'll be to ship something like this. And she was awesome about it, but that's kind of you almost have to do a trial run of that or else you could really get hurt in the long run. On
some new things that I carry, I always figure the first one is going to be, I'm going to have to get lost just figuring out the shipping.
I get it.
Yeah. But for some things, it makes absolutely perfect sense to use the shipping calculator because then it takes the brain work out. But it has its pros and cons. You have to weigh everything and put in the weight, for every item and all whatnot. But at the end of the day, you get a more accurate shipping charge that, or your buyer does anyway.
Right.
Now, what was I going to ask you? Oh, yes. Do you ever check out your competition and do you use that information in any way?
I do. And that was my most recent thing when I was looking at monogram letters, trying to figure out, should I make these into printable? Should I just take them down? So yes, to learn.
Yeah.
Either to learn, obviously pricing, not so much now because I feel like I've kind of figured that out for my stuff. And I, in general, as an artist, love looking at other people's artwork because it's very inspirational for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you get the word out about your Etsy shop. What do you do, or what have you been doing so far in the way of promoting your Etsy shop and just getting eyeballs in there? So,
social media is what most people mention right off the bat, but and I have, your Instagram. I have a personal Instagram, which is Emily Merce, and then I have my my shop Instagram, which is Emily Mercedes Art, so it would all match up. But I realize, not everybody wants to see a picture of who I think is the cutest kid ever. No, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? It's like, not everyone wants to see that if they just want to see your art project. So I have in my little description on my personal page, on my personal one, hey, if you want to see my art projects, follow this. And anyway, so I have 2 of those, and it's not super drastic to take care of one versus the other. The other one is pretty obvious. I'm like hanging out with my family usually. And then I have Pinterest, which I wish I had more time for. But I'm out there, and Twitter. But another thing that I did, and I thought this was so much fun and totally worth it, is I have so many cool influencers, and I use that word to describe like super amazing friends that happen to have lots of followers. So I actually, and they have good taste and all of that. So I actually reached out to all of them who I thought would be great influencers to show off my 90 Days of Nostalgia challenge. And it was so fun to see, people would I basically gave them free prints to give me a little shout out on Instagram. And it barely cost me anything. But it was so cool to get some more followers from other people. And they just took it and ran with it, and they either framed them or they got them, right in their little packaging and just took it right there. And yeah, each one of them gave me a great shout out, and I got some more followers, and it's been cool because those followers have kind of stuck with me, and have watched my progress and have maybe even commissioned me for pieces. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
I did try Hype Market, and I think somebody on this podcast mentioned it.
Oh, yes.
So I was like, well, I'm going to test this out. And I did a little thing. You can either pay Instagrammers to, make a post about your product or whatever it may be, or you can give them a product. In my case, I gave them a free 8x10 print.
Mm-hmm.
And the several people that were interested, they have to also be interested in doing it for you.
Yes.
So it seems like it's a cohesive thing. They happen to be international guys, and the shipping for that was a nightmare.
Oh.
And I lost so much money on that, and I'm sure I didn't get any sales from it, but it was it was one thing that I just really wanted to try.
Yeah.
And I think that I would try it again, but maybe denote that it'll only be US.
Yeah.
US only, and see how that goes. But I'm not itching to try it anytime soon because it was kind of a fail.
So just for anyone who's wondering, that's Hype Market. It's HYPEMARKET. And I'll have a link to that as well. You can check it out. And basically what it is it's a platform where it's just Instagram influencers, right, Emily?
From what I could tell.
Me too. So I've checked it out. It's so people on Instagram who have massive followings make themselves available to promote your product. And so you can send them something or pay them. So it's one or the other. Either you pay them or you send them a product, and then they'll post about it and basically do a blast out to all their followers. It's a good way to get new eyes on your products if that's what you're looking for, or if you have something to sell and it's the right type of influencer, a good way to get sales or traffic to your Etsy shop, because they will refer back to you. They're basically promoting you on to their audience. That's essentially what Hype Market is. So I'll have a link to that. You can go and check it out. I've personally never used it. I've looked at it. I know I've seen Etsy sellers on there who are looking for influencers to promote their stuff. Emily's actually the first one whose full experience I've actually heard about. So,
and it was a fail. I'm sure if I did it differently next time and just did US only, it would be maybe different. But
yeah,
I mean, I got some followers out of it, and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
But another thing that I just thought of, I've had the most traffic to my site when I was featured on the Chive and the Berry. And like I said, I made some pretty sweet connections over the past couple of years, and I was like, you know what, we're just gonna hit up my family and see if they don't mind, and they were cool about it. So I think one thing I want to do in the future, and in fact, anytime I'm listening to a podcast and somebody says, oh, I was featured on XYZ site, I immediately will email myself whatever site it is to kind of do more research about, because I think there's definitely something in being featured by other creatives or whatever else that gets a lot of traffic, because that's where I've gotten most of my sales is being featured on websites.
Right. And it absolutely makes sense, because Etsy sellers I know reach out to bloggers and influential bloggers to try, to get them to talk about their product or their Etsy shop, and then drive traffic and hopefully sales. So what you did with the Chive is exactly that. Except you were fortunate to have the family connection, but that's exactly what that is. And so it's a great way to get exposure, but you want to make sure for you listening that the audience of the blogger that you're approaching is appropriate for what you're selling, because not every audience is the right audience for your product. And I think sometimes Etsy sellers just to get the word out might sometimes go barking up the wrong tree. So take note of that too when you reach out to these bloggers and influencers.
Oh,
The other
for
thing
sure.
I was thinking, Emily, was how great would it have been if you were selling your prints when you did that 90 days and you had the Instagram influencers promoting your stuff and they could just go to your shop and buy.
I know that was the problem. I realized, oh my gosh, I'm losing some customers because they're like, where can I get this right now? And that's
Yes,
how people buy.
exactly.
I'm like, in just a minute, and it's like a week, you know. It was a very good learning experience for me.
Yeah,
But yeah, it would be huge. It would have been huge.
yeah. Well, you have another one coming up, so
I know.
yeah.
Hopefully I'll do it even better next time.
Yeah. Now, speaking about handling just everything that's related to Etsy, from creating your product to handling administrative tasks, responding to Etsy conversations, all that, typically, how much time does all that take? And I want people to get a realistic view of what it's like to run your business full time.
So Etsy related wise, I work probably 10 to 15 hours a week, and that includes random times on the weekends if Ryland's napping and my husband's at a baseball game or something. Yeah, it's about, give or take about 10 to 15 hours Etsy wise. And then I spend a lot of my other time creating, whether it's for a commissioned custom piece for people, or I'm working on a few children's books right now too.
Okay. And when you so we talked about you having a new line of products. Typically, what's the lifespan lifespan, not life expectancy of that when you get the new idea to actually creating the product line and then having it up and ready for sale? So like we talked about the monograms, which you just launched this week. Is that typical or atypical?
So it usually takes me from start to finish a few weeks to get everything out there. But that being said, I have constantly got ideas running around in my head. I'm like, wow, a whole line of XYZ would be really cool. And so I'm always just emailing myself. My email, if it's an unopened email, it's on this perpetual to-do list of wouldn't that be a cool idea?
Yes.
So you would not believe, my husband's probably like, okay, Emily. I'm like, oh, like a Game of Thrones thing yesterday that we were watching. I was like, oh, this tipped me off. I have an idea. What if I do this about cross-stitching? And he's like, what?
Emily, okay. We'll talk off air. Go on.
I know. He's probably like, okay, Emily, what are you thinking? So some of those other concepts I have had in my email for like 6 months. So it just depends. It really depends. I don't know.
Okay.
Usually a few weeks though.
Okay. But, well, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
And before I forget, I wanted to mention this before we left the whole Instagram topic. I'm going to have links to Emily's social media accounts so you can follow her. But she mentioned 2 Instagram accounts. The first one is her personal one, which is Emily Merce. And just so you know, it's EMILYMERCE. And then the second one, which is for her artwork, is Emily Mercedes Arts. But I will have links to those in case you're trying to look for her and couldn't find her, just FYI. Okay. So Emily, so you're one of those who jumped on Etsy and just started paddling away and figuring things out as you went along. So what are some of the things that you would, or maybe 1 or 2 things that you would tell that person who's listening now, who maybe came on the same way and is struggling? What are 1 or 2 things that you figured out pretty early on that you can save that person some frustration right now?
So I would say right off the bat is, how do you want to brand yourself? So I actually used to be just Emily Mercedes, and I thought, well, I can't find that in an Instagram handle. I want to be able to be across the board Emily Mercedes Art. Unfortunately, Twitter, that was too long, so I'm M Mercedes Art on Twitter. But basically, find your branding, figure out what you want, make some kind of logo. So whenever somebody sees that, for example, mine is an ostrich that I did, a painted a watercolor ostrich that I did, but it's now on, all over my Etsy site. It's the little icon that shows up on my Instagram. It's down to the stickers that I put on the cellophane that I wrap my prints on. And I even have a stamp from Rubber Stamps. I sent them a version of, a rendered version of my ostrich. And I don't know, I feel like having a cohesive brand, it just makes you seem more legit. Like, oh, you open up this package, you get a business card, everything matches. It just seems like it makes sense. So branding, and then getting your domain name right away. So I have emilymercedes.com. It so happens to redirect people to my Etsy page currently.
Okay.
I'll probably end up getting Emily Mercedes art if I can, but yeah, so branding, and then obviously shipping. I got all of my, I basically have Stay Flat mailers and chipboard to mail all of my prints. So I've never had an issue with prints coming back bent or
Damaged.
ruined, knock on wood. But I wanted to make sure I had all of that set to go and everything. So really, I did that kind of soft launch, and I did scramble a lot for certain things, but I wanted to make sure, like, hey, if somebody orders this, I want to make sure I can package it and ship it out. So, those are my two biggest pieces of advice there, branding and figure out, maybe even test out, like, go to the post office and say, hey, how much would it cost to ship this? Even if you don't ship it, they'll weigh it for you.
Yeah.
If you don't have a weight at home or a scale at home.
Yeah.
Get a scale at home and do shipping through Etsy also.
Yeah.
Easy. So easy.
I'm glad you mentioned the shipping supplies, because that's one thing. I know when I started, I didn't even pay any attention to, just because I wasn't expecting anyone to buy anything anytime soon. And then when they did, I was so excited, but it was at night. So, I'm in the garage, I'm looking for empty Amazon boxes. Like, which one is the best one? Don't do that. Get proper shipping supplies.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Do you have a shipping supplier that you found that you get good quality stuff from at reasonable prices?
Not one supplier. I just have been ordering stuff on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What is one, maybe two things about selling on the Etsy platform that currently you really are truly enjoying? And then what features don't currently exist that at some point in the future you would like to see Etsy implement?
So I can't believe it took me this long to even realize that there was a copy feature. I don't know what I was thinking. It took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize there was a copy feature. And somebody mentioned that. I was like, what? I looked at it, and it was so right in front of my face. It was so, use the copy feature, especially if your listings are similar. Man, does that save so much time?
Yeah.
So I'm loving that right now. Obviously it's very easy to use, and I like that it's its own little search place. If you're going for something specific, you're in with a bunch of other awesome creatives that are hardworking individuals just like yourself. So, and there's a level of quality when you go to Etsy. You're going to get quality. You may be paying a little bit more for it, but I like the whole brand is great. And then this is one thing that I'm wondering if maybe it is a thing already. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, oh, Ijama, maybe you know the answer. Okay. So you know how in the new the new listing where you can make a custom page and you kind of line up everything and make it look just so. Is that only for the first page, or can you do that all the way through?
Wait, what?
Okay, so you can make a custom page, but it looks like it's just basically quote unquote above the fold, like maybe the first, I would say 30 or 40 listings.
Right.
And then if you click to page 2, is it true that you cannot rearrange anything on that second page?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. And if you're listening to this and you know the answer, can you please go to convome.com/EmilyMercedesArt and tell us in the comments section? Because I don't know the answer.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm like, that'd be cool, because I like things lined up just so, and
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh,
That's
cool.
the only thing that I was wondering. I'm like, maybe that's a thing and I'm like going to be laughed at. Like, duh. Everyone knows you can do that.
Well, if you're, then you and I both will be laughed at because I don't know.
Okay, perfect. High fives.
High five. What's something that you think is really working well for you now? Something that you know you've hit your stride on Etsy. It's, it just clicks.
I think that because I've been so trained to be my own PR person with initially being the berry girl, I'm not afraid to promote myself. Like I will tell you right away, I'm an artist. You want to see my stuff? I'm not I'm not even afraid. Most artists are like, I'm going to hide in the corner and I don't want anyone to ever see my work. I'm like, look at this. I just really have always been okay with that. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So, so I'm always giving my card out. I've always been that way. You got to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so on your card, do you direct people to your Etsy shop or somewhere else, or just have them contact you directly?
So I have emilymercedes.com on there because it redirects to my site. The same thing on all of my stickers. It just looks sharper instead of like /shop/Emily, So I have emilymercedes.com on there.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the things I meant to mention earlier or talk about earlier, but kind of slipped. I know you talked about getting commissioned work.
Yes.
Let's talk about that because that's huge for artists. That's like it's a big deal when you get to do commissioned work. How did you get your first assignment, and how do you advise other artists to go about attracting that attention that will result in getting commissioned work?
So a lot of my custom pieces have come from people that have seen my artwork either through Instagram or my personal Facebook page. And they're either somebody that I not always know or friends of friends. That's the majority of people where they get to see kind of my wheelhouse, or they have a friend that has a baby shower coming up and wouldn't this be perfect kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten some really cool custom requests through Etsy, and I was actually kind of curious. I'll give you a great example. I have those iconic chairs, and there's a gal that reached out to me. She's a psychologist, I believe. She reached out to me. She said, "Hey, I'm redoing my website. I love your Eames lounge chair. Could you do it in cream?" And by the time we finished our conversation, I ended up doing an entire blue Eames chair for her, with a different kind of base, not a lounge chair, and some succulent vases for her. And, gave her the digital file so she could give it to her web developer. And now she has the actual original paintings, if she wanted to put them in her office. But I said, "Hey, I know you reached out to me through Etsy, but how did you happen to find me?" And she said, "Oh, I just Googled watercolor Eames lounge chair." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's pretty cool."
Wow.
Yeah, and just some of the other characters that people had seen throughout my process. I had a Kermit the Frog one, and somebody wanted one for their friend, and so yeah, it's been really wild. But I'm lucky to have been consistently commissioned since I did the challenge up until now. And I tell my husband every time I think I'm finished with my last one, like knock on wood, but another one comes in and I'm like, whoa, cool. This is so great. So I just keep rolling with it. And if it stops, I'll just keep being creative in other ways. And yeah.
For yourself personally, would you prefer to do more commissioned work and less individual pieces?
I love commissioned work.
Okay.
I think it is, it doesn't involve me going to the print shop to scan it in and then go pick it up and, pay for the cost of that. It's just, I've got watercolor paper or canvases. I want to get more into my canvases because I actually love oil and acrylic, but you can obviously charge more, and it's so unique to kind of add to your online portfolio, if you will. So it's been a really fun challenge.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, Emily, what, if any, resources or tools are you currently using that help you sell on Etsy or be a better Etsy seller that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Your podcast, Ijama, has been amazing, and I unabashedly have gone through and listened to almost all of them. And I love a couple other podcasts, like I mentioned, Art for Your Ear, and then the gals from Dear Handmade Life have really good ones too. Yeah. They have some great episodes. So I have my earbuds in if I'm either working out or, painting. So that's been huge for me because I'll just email myself something or write it down. If someone says I use this tool, I'm like, what's that tool? And I research from there. So that's been huge.
Yeah. And were you able to make it to the Craftcation this past April?
No, it sounds like so much fun though.
Yeah.
Have you been?
Sorry?
Have you been?
No, and I was supposed to go in April, but that's a whole other story. But it's put on by the Dear Handmade Life gals, and it's basically like a crafting sanctuary, but you learn as well. You learn you can improve your craft, but also about how to run a crafting business from, in a conference setting. So it sounds like I missed it last year, and this year I was supposed to go, but I'm readjusting and I'm saying next year.
Yeah, that would be so awesome. It sounds like it's so informative.
Yeah. All right. Now, before I let you go, do you have any Etsy shop shout outs?
Yes. Okay. So all of my product shots are actually, I've photoshopped by downloading different settings and frames and such. And I have two that I just love. Brown leopard, and then I'm probably going to butcher this, but Hisari DS, so HISARIDS. They have some awesome templates. If you know a thing or two about Photoshop and you either can't afford a photographer or you're not so good at photography yourself, It's great. It's great to position things and make it look crisp and clear and all that. So that's been great for me to find those people.
Oh, I know Brown Leopard because I was looking for what do you call it, a mock-up to stage something that I was selling. And that's how I found Brown Leopard. I'm like, wait, when you said Brown Leopard, I'm like, I think I know Brown Leopard actually. Not personally, but from having shopped there. So.
I love sticking within the Etsy community. And also Kim Conan from Tiny Hearts, you've had on several times.
Yes, Kim.
She is so cool. So I reached out to her. You know how sometimes you listen and you get so inspired, you're like, I'm gonna convo them.
Yes.
I hope anybody listening to this feels free to reach out to me, please. But so I convoed her and she was so sweet. She was like, do you want me to take a look at your shop? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you want to look? I mean, not that people should be like banging down her door for it, but she was so sweet and, took a look at my shop and gave me some really cool feedback. And I was just so grateful for her. Oh,
yeah. Kim is fantastic. And for anyone who doesn't know, Kim used to work for Etsy. She was an admin at Etsy. And she's been on the podcast a couple of times now. We did a question and answer session, which I think it was almost 2 hours long. I gathered questions and Kim answered like everything and just went over and above. And then she also runs an Etsy shop called Tiny Hearts. If you're interested in either of those, I'll link back to them. Kim's episode with just her talking about her Etsy shop is 103. And then the Q&A, it doesn't have a number. It was just a bonus episode that I threw in there, but it was back in June of 2015. And Kim is fabulous. She's so giving. She's so knowledgeable. I'm amazed at how she takes time to just help people. But yes, don't overwhelm her. But yeah, do reach out to her. She's a sweetheart.
And then you had Dahlia Abdallah on. She's Etsy Seller Mastermind.
Yes.
It's totally worth it to do her webinar if you don't know anything about SEO. Now I watched her video like 2 or 3 times, and now I make listings and I feel confident with how I'm tagging things. And
oh, very good. Was that the Etsy SEO webinar that you watched, or the Rock Your Descriptions?
The Etsy SEO webinar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And then I swear I'm done. But I want to I'm like, shout out to every Etsy seller ever. And that covers it.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's good. And if you haven't heard Dahlia's episode, she was on in March of 2016, and it's episode 121. And the way I found out about Dahlia was through another Etsy seller who I had on, Kathy Bennett, and she runs the Painted Pearl SRQ, and she was the one who turned me on to Dahlia and everything she's doing. So shout out to both of you. Any more?
No, I'm swearing. I'm good.
All right. Emily, it's been such fun talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Ijama. You've helped me out, and I'm sure you've helped so many other people out that have so many questions about becoming entrepreneurs.
Oh, you're welcome. And for all the links to everything we talked about, they're going to be in the podcast show notes or the blog post episode for this conversation. Go to convome.com/Emily Mercedes Art. Everything will be there. All the links to everywhere you can find Emily on social media and directly. But Emily, in case someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can reach you?
I have an email. It's emilymercedesart@gmail.com, or Etsy Conversation works perfectly fine too.
Okay. And I will have those as well in the show notes for this episode, so you can reach out to Emily. And if you have an answer to our question about the page thing, please do go to the blog, or you can email Emily or me directly. I thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for joining me again for another episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me. You guys listening is everything for me. So thank you. And I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.